Stop pouring that cement. You're going to flood the whole neighborhood. That's what I yelled the day the HOA sent workers to bury the little creek that ran behind my property. But of course, they didn't listen. Because in their eyes, I was just a nuisance homeowner who didn't know what he was talking about. Well, fast forward 6 months later, and guess what? The same HOA that ignored me ended up spending over $100,000 pumping water out of their own streets, because the very creek they buried was the only thing keeping the neighborhood from flooding. Let me back up a little. When I first bought my house, one of the biggest selling points was the small creek that ran along the back edge of my yard. It wasn't huge, but it was beautiful. Birds, frogs, even the occasional turtle would stop by. And beyond the looks, it served an important purpose. That creek was part of the neighborhood's natural drainage system. Every time it rained, water from the higher streets flowed down into it. The creek carried that water into a larger river a mile away. Without it, my entire neighborhood would have been sitting in puddles. But then came the HOA. Our HOA president, let's call her Linda, though honestly, Karen would have fit too, decided she didn't like the creek. Her reason? She thought it looked messy. Yep, that's it. She said the sight of water running through the neighborhood made it look cheap. She wanted the backyards to look uniform. In her mind, concrete was prettier than nature. At the next HOA meeting, she announced her big plan. We're going to cover the creek with cement. That way, the backyards will look neat, clean, and consistent. No more swampy mess. I raised my hand immediately. That's not a swamp. That's a drainage creek. If you cover it, the water won't have anywhere to go. Linda rolled her eyes. Please. I've done my research. We'll redirect any extra water into the storm drains. I asked, did you consult an engineer? Or the city? She smirked. We don't need one. I know what I'm doing. And just like that, the board voted yes. A few weeks later, construction crews arrived. I stood in my yard watching as they poured cement straight into the creek bed, filling it up like they were patching a hole in a driveway. I tried to stop them. I called the city. I even emailed the county. But the HOA had spun the story, claiming it was just a beautification project and that no environmental rules were being broken. When I told Linda she was making a huge mistake, she laughed in my face. Don't worry, hero. If we have water problems, we'll handle it. You just worry about mowing your lawn. Oh, I worried, all right. But I also waited. The first couple of weeks after the creek was buried, nothing major happened. But then came the first real storm of the season. Rain poured for hours. My yard turned into a small lake, because the water that used to run down into the creek now had nowhere to go. But it wasn't just my yard. The water spread. Driveways filled up. Streets turned into rivers. One neighbor's car got stuck in the middle of the road because the water rose above the tires. And where was the HOA? Running around with buckets and shovels, trying to unclog storm drains that were never designed to handle that much water. The next morning, Linda sent out an email blaming the city's poor drainage system. I hit reply all and wrote, the city drainage worked fine, until you buried the creek. Let's just say, she didn't appreciate that. But here's the thing about water, it doesn't just disappear. And storms kept coming. Each time it rained, the flooding got worse. Lawns drowned. Kids couldn't play outside. Mosquitoes swarmed because of all the standing water. And the HOA? Instead of admitting their mistake, they doubled down. They hired workers to pump water out of the streets after every storm. Big gas-powered pumps, hoses running down the road, giant water trucks sucking it up. I asked a worker one day, how much is this costing them? He smirked. Buddy, this isn't cheap. They're burning money every time it rains. And he was right. By the third storm, they had already spent tens of thousands of dollars. The final straw came in the middle of summer. We had a week of heavy rain, and the neighborhood basically turned into a swamp. Water sat for days, and people started filing insurance claims for damage. One family even had their basement ruined. That's when the city finally stepped in. They sent inspectors, who walked through the neighborhood, shook their heads, and called the HOA into an emergency meeting. I wasn't supposed to be in that meeting, but a board member who secretly agreed with me slipped me the link to the Zoom call. And oh boy, it was glorious. The city engineer didn't mince words. You filled in a natural drainage creek without permits. You violated city code and disrupted the watershed. This is why your streets are flooding. Linda tried to interrupt, but we redirected the water to the storm drains. The engineer cut her off. Storm drains aren't designed to handle that much runoff. You destroyed the only system that worked. This is negligence. You could see Linda's face turn red on camera. But the best part? The city ordered the HOA to fix it immediately, at their own expense. And fix it they did. The HOA had to hire contractors to remove the cement, dig out the creek, and rebuild the drainage system properly. But by then, so much damage had been done that it wasn't just a matter of digging it back up. They had to reinforce the banks, install new piping, and restore the flow. All told, the project cost over $100,000. And guess where that money came from? Yep, HOA funds. Which meant higher fees for every homeowner in the neighborhood. People were furious. At the next HOA election, Linda was voted out faster than you can blink. Nobody wanted her beautification projects anymore. The funniest part? After the creek was restored, the neighborhood looked even better than before. The water flowed smoothly, the wildlife came back, and people actually enjoyed the little natural feature that Linda had once called ugly. As for me, I sit in my backyard sometimes, listening to the sound of the creek running, and I smile. Because every time it rains now, instead of worrying about flooding, I remember how Linda spent 6 figures trying to fix the mess she created, all because she thought concrete was prettier than nature. So, what's the takeaway here? It's simple. You can't fight nature with arrogance. That creek had been doing its job for decades. It didn't need a makeover. It didn't need cement. It needed respect. But Linda thought her title as HOA president made her smarter than engineers, smarter than the city, and smarter than common sense. And in the end, nature proved her wrong. Respect the systems that are already in place. Respect the wisdom of those who came before. And most importantly, don't let a power-hungry HOA president convince you that looking neat is more important than actually working. Because when you ignore common sense, you end up spending $100,000 pumping water out of your own streets. And that's how the HOA buried a creek, ignored common sense, and ended up flushing $100,000 straight down the drain. What do you think? Was this karma or just pure stupidity? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more crazy HOA tales, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, stay smart, stay kind, and never let a Karen bury your creek.